Look at the Capitol, where the Reverend Billy Graham's remains lie in honor tonight in the Rotunda. Earlier today, our nation's leader spoke of his impact on our country and the world. Here's President Trump.
Starting at a small Bible school in Florida, he soon led a nationwide revival. From a large tent in Los Angeles to 100,000 people in a single day at Yankee Stadium. And I remember that because my father said to me, "Come on, son." And by the way, he said, "Come on, Mom, let's go see Billy Graham at Yankee Stadium." And it was something very special.
So the funeral will be Friday in Charlotte. The president and the vice president and their wives will be there. That's our story for tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Tucker's up next.
Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. There was a lot of news going on, and we'll get to it in just a minute. But first, a bigger story that we think will shape the country your grandchildren will inhabit, maybe more than any other. The nation's immigration laws are breaking down before our eyes. The people charged with enforcing those laws are instead destroying them. Yesterday, we told you about Chicago, the city of Chicago, and its new plan to give ID cards to illegal immigrants. Those official IDs will allow non-citizens to vote. That's against federal law. Not to mention the very idea of democracy. America is supposed to be run by Americans. That's the point of it. But politicians in Chicago are pushing to subvert that. If you're looking for a foreign influence scandal, and everyone in here in D.C. is looking for one, you got it, because it's happening in Chicago right now. Foreign citizens will be electing our political leaders. Chicago Alderman Amaya Pawar came on this show last night and tried to tell us that it was our imagination. None of this is happening. Illegal immigrants, he said, can't vote because in Illinois you have to prove you're a citizen in order to register to vote. Watch him tell you that.
In order for someone to register to vote, they would have to sign an affidavit and present a birth certificate, a passport, a social security card, and potentially this. So you'd still need a second form of ID.
So you're saying that in order to register to vote in the state of Illinois, you need to produce evidence of citizenship. Is that your claim?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we rarely play tape of people who've been on the show when they're not here to respond because it seems like bad sportsmanship. You ought to be able to respond directly to a claim against you. But we're replaying that because it so perfectly crystallizes the dishonesty in our public conversation on this subject. You just heard an elected official look right into the camera and tell you a lie. Not once, but 3 times. That's not true, what he said. You do not need proof of citizenship to register to vote in the state of Illinois. We checked. Everyone who lives there knows this. You just need proof of an address and an ID, exactly like the one the city of Chicago is giving away to illegal immigrants. He's encouraging them to take. Informed people who say anything other than that are lying. And they're lying because they want illegal aliens to vote, but they don't want you to know about it or complain. That is called fraud. Meanwhile, in Oakland, California, maybe Mayor Libby Schaaf is taking the side of illegal aliens over American citizens, but maybe to her credit, she's doing it right out in the open. She's trying to sabotage federal immigration enforcement. She issued a public warning to illegal immigrants in Oakland last weekend. She told them of an impending ICE raid so they could go into hiding and avoid federal agents. It's like telling bank robbers the cops are on the way. Who is she protecting by doing that? Well, we have brand new numbers on that question. According to information supplied to this program by ICE, 864 illegal aliens, criminal aliens, and public safety threats remain at large in Oakland. These are exactly the people the mayor is warning before the authorities get there. We'll just give you a couple examples. One is a Honduran citizen who has been arrested multiple times for cocaine trafficking and, by the way, for having sex with a minor. Another, from Mexico, has been arrested and convicted for carrying a loaded gun, for DUI, drug smuggling. Both of these guys have been deported from the U.S. multiple times. They've come back every time. They've been allowed to do that because Democratic politicians want them to stay here because, you know the answer, each one of these people, no matter how revolting, is a potential vote for them. That's the bottom line. Across the country, Democrats have given up on the middle class. They're not trying to fix your problems. They don't care. They don't share your concerns. They're not pretending to. They're the party of foreign voters now, many of them illegal. Democrats argue from the House floor that immigration law, the laws they passed, by their body, the lawmaking body, those laws should be ignored or nullified. Anyone who disagrees is shouted down with slurs. It happens on this show all the time. Kansas, for example, has a law requiring proof of citizenship for voter registration. Who wouldn't support that? Non-citizens are not allowed to vote for federal office. Period. It's a federal law. Well, the ACLU is suing. You think they'll sue the mayor of Oakland for siding with MS-13 over American citizens? Don't hold your breath. Chris Kobach is the Secretary of State of Kansas, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Kobach, thanks for coming on.
Great to be with you, Tucker.
So I just want to be totally clear on this because, and I hate because I really think people ought to have a chance to respond to what you say about them. I'm sorry the alderman is not here. We had a long conversation with him last night. He told us 3 times. He said, look, I'm an expert on electoral law in the state of Illinois. You have to prove you're a citizen of the country in order to register to vote. Is that true?
That is false. Anyone who studies this issue knows there are only 4 states where the laws require you to provide proof of citizenship when you register to vote. And those states are Kansas, Arizona, Alabama, and Georgia. And of those 4, only Kansas and Arizona have fully implemented the law. The other 2 states are in the process of starting to implement.
So just to be clear, what you do need in every state is a government ID, a university-recognized ID, and that's the one thing that's kind of hard for illegal aliens to get because they're not supposed to be here. So when government gives them an ID that is sufficient for voter registration, how are they not abetting
all of the time during a morning show, weekday mornings from 6 to 10 a.m. Your station for today's R&B and throwbacks is Star 94.5. Listen
you don't need to provide proof of citizenship. All you need to do is check a box that says I am a U.S. citizen. And we have found hundreds of cases all over the country. We've had expert witnesses look at Kansas, and it could be as high as 18,000 aliens on our voter rolls. In other states, it's probably in the 6 figures or more. But the point is, people are doing this all the time, sometimes intentionally, sometimes the non-citizens are doing it unintentionally. They can't even read what it is they've just signed, or they didn't pay attention to it. And then they start getting mail from the candidates saying, hey, you're a registered voter. Don't forget to vote for me, and don't forget to vote on August 7th or whatever the date is. So if they're registering and they're voting.
But why wouldn't that make a difference in elections? I mean, clearly the Democratic Party is abetting this. They're doing this on purpose. They're printing these IDs at government expense, public expense, giving them to illegals and letting them register to vote. I mean, why is this not an electoral strategy? It looks like that.
It certainly looks that way. And it does seem that many in the Democrat Party, hopefully not all, seem to think that it's okay if aliens vote. And yeah, maybe they shouldn't be, but heck, it helps the Democrat Party anyway. Some of them have talked like that, and I think it's appalling. Look, only Americans are allowed to vote in these elections. You win or lose by persuading Americans that your policies are right. The idea that we would try to replace or outweigh American voters by bringing in foreign voters is outrageous.
Yeah, that's the foreign influence scandal. So you're in the middle of a lawsuit over something related to this.
Yeah. Yeah, so the ACLU has kind of declared war on election security laws like ours in Kansas. And this war is something that is outrageous. They're making ridiculous arguments, like it's an unconstitutional burden for you to reach into your file cabinet at home and find your birth certificate. Or they're claiming that the National Motor Voter Law of 1993 somehow created a special privilege. If you get your license at the DMV, you don't have to prove citizenship, even though the law doesn't say that. So they're crazy arguments, but we're fighting them in court next week.
Yeah, well, I hope it's really clear to our audience what the point of all this is, because it is clear. Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Acting ICE Director Thomas Holman spoke frankly about what Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf did when she warned of the impending raids in her city. Watch.
What she did is no better than a gang lookout yelling police when a police cruiser comes in the neighborhood, except she did it to the entire community. I mean, it's beyond the pale. I've been doing this for 34 years, and this is a whole new low to intentionally warn criminals that law enforcement's coming.
John Yoo is a professor at Bolt Law School at UC Berkeley and was Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President Bush, and he joins us tonight. John, thanks for coming on. So I think it's allowed, I think states, my understanding is, do not have the obligation to enforce federal law, but are they allowed to subvert it?
No, and I think the Constitution and the Supreme Court are quite clear. Immigration law is the sole preserve of the federal government. And so the federal government has the right to enforce its laws. The federal government can't commandeer or compel state officers to help them, but state officers cannot impede or obstruct federal law. We had a civil war about this. This is what the Civil War was really about, was whether state officials could block national federal laws.
So, I mean, not to draw too fine a point on it, but I mean, you often hear the left say this is a fascist administration. If it's such a fascist administration, why aren't they doing anything about this at all?
Well, first of all, it's not fascist to want to obey the federal laws passed by the people we elected in Congress. That's the way our system works. If state mayors and state governors oppose the Trump administration's immigration priorities, then our Constitution sets up a system. You go and elect new members of Congress, and they change the law.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for that. So what about, it's pretty clear that the state of California, the city of Chicago, are making it easier for people here legally to vote in our elections, which is a crime, federal elections. Why doesn't the U.S. government do something about that?
Well, I think, take the situation mentioned here in Oakland. You also have the situation with Rahm Emanuel in Chicago. You have mayors who are encouraging the subversion of federal law. They are coming very close to committing obstruction of justice. Obstruction of justice is corruptly impeding or obstructing federal officers who are trying to carry out their legal duty. So if the mayor, for example, if mayors are trying to get people to vote who aren't supposed to vote, or as in Oakland, if you have a mayor who's trying to warn people that federal officers are coming to carry out federal law, I think you're coming very close, if not stepping over the line, to obstruction of justice.
It sure seems that way. I hope others in Washington agree with you. Thank you for that context. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks, Tucker.
We've got a Fox News alert for you. White House Communications Director and Trump confidant, perhaps his closest aide, Hope Hicks, is leaving the administration. She announced it this afternoon. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry has been on it since it happened, and he joins us now. Hey, Ed.
Tucker, good to see you. In fact, we've just learned in the last few moments that after this story broke late this afternoon, Hope Hicks was seen crying, as were some other communications staffers here in the West Wing of the White House. What that tells us is she is somebody who's been very popular around here, particularly with the president, but also with top aides, and that this was very unexpected and sudden. In fact, she's someone, Hicks, who's only 29 years old and yet became very effective around here, influential. The president's longest-serving aide, getting high marks for helping to shepherd the tax cut messaging late last year. That's why her exit statement focuses on how there are, in her words, there's no way to adequately express her gratitude to the president. The president also put out a written statement that was glowing in praising her 3 years here at his side, dating back, of course, to the campaign. But remember, Hicks received negative publicity when her boyfriend at the time, White House aide Rob Porter, left after accusations he had abused 2 ex-wives. Then yesterday, Hicks went behind closed doors for about 9 hours, testifying before the House Intel Committee about Russia, and took heat today after it was revealed she told lawmakers she had told white lies for the president. Nonetheless, top advisors tell me this exit has nothing to do with yesterday's testimony that Hicks had signaled in recent weeks she was already planning to step down. Also, senior advisors to the president telling me that the real story behind the scenes is that Chief of Staff John Kelly is trying to consolidate power, even though Kelly did put out a statement declaring that Hicks, quote, has served her country with great distinction. Remember, this comes amid indications Kelly may also be trying to ease out Jared Kushner, senior advisor and presidential son-in-law, after a series of leaks about his security clearance troubles. In fact, Bloomberg has got a breaking news story tonight that says more than 30 White House staffers have been stripped of their top secret clearances. That's a story that's not going away, Tucker.
No, it's not. Ed Henry, thank you.
Good to see you.
We've also got, as if there wasn't enough news, more breaking news about the police response to the high school shooting in Florida. New exclusive information just coming into Fox. We're going to tell you in just a minute when we come back. Also, is Google working with a left-wing group to decide what you can see online? Short answer, yes. Long answer, straight ahead. Matt?
Tucker, new tonight, there are some heavy allegations against the commanding officer running the scene the day of the shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School. Multiple law enforcement sources allege that the commanding officer prematurely gave responding deputies orders to stage and form a perimeter outside during critical moments after the shootings, when they say all deputies should have been running towards the school to neutralize the shooter. One law enforcement source says the alleged bad command goes against all training to go towards towards the shooter. Another law enforcement officer said the alleged bad commands could have been detrimental to victims. Every second is another life. We spoke with multiple sources in law enforcement at the city and county level who say they heard the scene that day was chaotic. The Broward County Sheriff's Office active shooter policy indicates the first priority for responding deputies is to enter the structure to preserve life. Staging and a perimeter apparently not listed as a priority. All of the sources' allegations seem to be backed up by a copy of the dispatch call log from the shooting that day obtained by Fox News, which appears to indicate several commands for deputies to stage or form a perimeter when calls were still going across the radio that the shooter's ID and whereabouts were not known. What a source calls still a very active situation. However, at least 2 law enforcement sources we spoke to say the state's investigation into the timeline that day will reveal if the calls for deputies to stage outside was the right call, because staging eventually has to happen at every scene. Each emergency situation is unique. The commander that day may have known something the rest of the crews did not. We asked the Broward County Sheriff's Office for comment. We also asked the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which is investigating the Sheriff's Office, for comment, and each said that this is an active investigation, that they cannot comment on it, and they will eventually reveal their timelines. Tucker.
Matt Finn, thanks a lot for that. Pretty remarkable. Well, a story just published on BuzzFeed concedes something that just last week was considered hate speech on CNN. It's this: Stoneman Douglas High School students who are pushing for gun control are in fact getting a ton of help from professional anti-gun organizations. The BuzzFeed story notes that lobby groups like Everytown for Gun Safety, Move On, Women's March LA, even somehow Planned Parenthood, have been showering the student activists with resources and assistance. Now, obviously, they're within their rights to do that, and we don't doubt the sincerity of anyone involved. We generally think people believe what they say they believe. We take them at face value. But that doesn't mean the rest of us can't say what we believe, especially when it's obviously true. For example, of course these kids, fresh from the most traumatic event of their lives, were likely getting help for some very ideological adults who'd swept into town to make the best possible political use of the moment. That was immediately clear to anybody who's ever been around politics, obviously. Sheriff David Clark and a number of other people basically said that, and they were immediately savaged by our moronic pundit class as immoral ghouls who shouldn't be allowed in the public conversation. But it looks like Sheriff Clark and the rest were pretty much right. Is anyone going to issue a correction on that? We're waiting for it. Well, Google is policing the content posted to YouTube, and they're using a thoroughly discredited left-wing group to do that. Google is creating a group of trusted flaggers who will help the company monitor alleged extremist content on the website. One of those trusted flaggers is not trusted at all. It's the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's not an expert on the South or poverty or the law. John Stossel recently explained the truth about this group in an amazing report. Here's part of it.
The Southern Poverty Law Center, based in that building in Alabama, calls itself the premier group monitoring hate groups. Looking at their map of such groups, you'd think America was consumed by hate. I once believed in the center's mission. Well-meaning people still do. Apple just gave them $1 million. But what donors don't know is that today the center smears people who don't deserve to be smeared. The Southern Poverty Law Center now lists people like Ben Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and Jeannie Pirro as extremists. But it doesn't list Antifa, the hate group that beats up people on the right. The center's become a hate group itself. It's now a left-wing, money-grabbing slander machine.
It's a hate group. It is a hate group, too. Let's just be honest about that. Eric Schiffer is a tech entrepreneur, and he joins us tonight. So, Eric, you follow this stuff closely. How did the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is wholly discredited and wholly political, wind up policing content on the most powerful company in the world? How'd that happen?
You know, it's hard to understand. I think what was going on, Tucker, is that YouTube, in essence, was trying to be inclusive in their mind and really trying to have an optical perspective that they were being and doing everything they could, because they were taking a lot of heat from people saying they weren't doing enough to stop ISIS and extremist groups. Right. So that's what led to this. But it's just too far. I mean, you know, I can't imagine how they can have this group. And really, in my opinion, more should be done, and a lot more.
So, I mean, for people watching at home who think that Southern Poverty Law Center sounds like a legitimate group, give us an example of the people or movements or websites they have deemed out, beyond the pale, haters, extremists. Who have they called that?
Well, I mean, Laura Ingraham, Ben Carlson. I mean, so you've got conservative figures that they are labeling. And I think it's gone too far. It really, in my opinion, that YouTube should fire Southern Poverty immediately from all YouTube monitoring, because it's an outrage. I mean, to have the possibility of an anti-conservative hitting delete for partisan reasons or on any content that's relevant to patriotic Americans. And I think Google really needs to be, and YouTube, be transparent. I mean, moving forward, to monitor content and have a no policy related to anyone that has any political affiliation or any reputation for being partisan. And I think also there really needs to be an apology to patriotic Americans that use YouTube for this gross oversight and unfair process that's really done not with any kind of disclosure in the choice of using Southern Poverty for the monitoring of content. It just doesn't make sense. And frankly, it opens up a bunch of things. I mean, when they're doing this to conservatives, what else are they doing it to?
Well, that's a great question. We don't know because, of course, it's totally opaque. And by the way, whatever happened to saying what you think is true, even if people don't like it? But I guess that's passé. Eric, thank you. It's great to see you tonight.
Thank you, Tucker. My pleasure.
Well, a suspect accused of hacking computers in Congress, perhaps taking classified information, was caught trying to flee the country, and the FBI let her go. That happened. Why? That story's next. He was caught trying to board a plane with a likely illegal amount of cash. Imran Awan is awaiting trial on charges of fraudulent procurement and bank fraud, but he may also have hacked the computers of numerous House Democrats. Thanks to an FBI blunder, though, his wife is safe at this moment in Pakistan. Luke Rosiak broke that story for the Daily Caller News Foundation, which is a nonprofit that shares a name similar to a website I once started and owned shares in, but no longer run. There's my disclosure. He joins us tonight. Hey, Luke.
Hey, Tucker.
So boil us down for us. Why is this a big deal?
So this is the pattern that we've seen time and again, where the DOJ and the FBI have evidence of crimes, in particular in cases involving Democrats and the politically connected, and then there's just no charges. And it's stuff that everyone knows. If the average Joe were to do this stuff, they're going right to jail.
So what would be the charges in this case that are not being filed?
So the House Inspector General found before the 2016 election that these guys made unauthorized access to House data. They were impersonating members of Congress. They were funneling data off the House network. They were covering their tracks. The House tried to block them. They found ways around it. This is malicious intent. These guys, this is hacking. This is cyber infiltration. And so the House Inspector General spent 6 months putting together this report, whole team of government investigators, and they conclude that they're doing all these things. So put yourself in the context of it's before the election, the DNC were dealing with the hack of that, and these government investigators bring this investigation to the FBI on a silver platter. And it basically says these guys infiltrated Congress. They made unauthorized access.
They worked for Debbie Wasserman Schultz at the time.
Yeah, so the issue is they worked for a number of Democratic members of Congress, but they were accessing data that they had no business accessing, and they were taking data off the network, doing a bunch of other really scary things.
So is there any chance they'll be charged? Or do you know why they're not being charged?
Well, and that's the big question here. So this happened before the election. So what does the FBI do? They put literally a first-year agent on the case. And we're talking, this is the same pattern of the DNC hack. We've got potential foreign meddling, but we've got a cyber breach. And they put a junior guy on the case. He watches them. And basically the IG report pinpoints this particular server on the House as ground zero of the hack. That server is stolen from out underneath the nose of the FBI. And the FBI still doesn't make an arrest. They surveil this guy. They watch him move hundreds of thousands of dollars to Pakistan. They follow his wife to the airport, watch her board the plane, and basically wave goodbye. So they've made no arrest, and they're going to be in court next Thursday. And they've tried to be vague about this whole thing, but the fact is, I've seen the IG report, the DOJ has the IG report, and the FBI has the IG report. If you have seen that IG report, you cannot conclude anything other than that these guys infiltrated Congress. They made unauthorized access to data. It's the kind of thing where criminal charges, there's no way around it.
You might almost say they hacked our democracy, but you're the only one who is saying that. Weird. Luke Rosiak, thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think it's a real story, a big one. In 2016, both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama said it was impossible to hack American elections. Today, though, Hillary Clinton accused President Trump of, quote, surrender to Russia, with whom she apparently thinks we're at war, by not doing more to stop Russian interference. Philippe Reines is a longtime Russia hunter, an enemy of the Kremlin, also a former Hillary Clinton advisor. He worked with her at State and other places. He joins us tonight. So, Philippe, how is Trump, like, what exactly specifically should Trump be doing against the Russians right now?
Well, let me try it this way. Let's forget about 2016. Let's assume that he won 50 states, 535-0. She came out of her voting booth and said, you know what, he's so great, I voted for him. Nothing happened in 2016. Let's assume for a moment that Donald Trump's CIA director, his director of national intelligence, and his director of the NSA testified before Congress and told him, presumably, that North Korea was attempting and planning on disrupting our elections in 2018 as a precursor to 2020. And they were doing so with the intent of disrupting the incumbents, and they might hurt House members who are incumbents. What conversation we would be having then?
I would. Here's, like, I've been here most of my life. I don't really care what a lot of people in Washington State, because they're dishonest and stupid.
Well, for a moment,
let's stipulate. You know, you really telling me that Russia, which has a contracting economy and population and position on the world stage, a single military base outside its own borders, is a graver threat to the United States than China, or even in the same
first off, I don't think it's whack-a-mole. They could both be significant adversaries.
We're not talking at all. We're sucking up to China. Our business sector, our entertainment sector, our political sector, all kowtow toward China. We're not.
I'm not defending China.
No, but I'm just saying, like, what we're hearing from the Democratic left is that the existential threat to the country is from Russia, and the facts don't show that. It's insane, actually.
The intelligence show, and it's intelligence presented by Donald Trump's appointees, Republican appointees, that they are going to interfere with our 2018 election.
How exactly are they going to do that?
They've done it a number of ways. First of all, we've now learned that they got into the registration rolls of 7 states prior to election day.
So how do you imagine? I mean, look,
how did they get into Sony? I mean, the North Koreans got into Sony.
But I mean, it's like a serious question.
I mean, you and I can't talk about how someone does or doesn't hack anything.
Hold on. Democrats have pushed
after you're talking about 2 people who got into the DNC.
Look, I'm against foreign hacking. China is the primary
So what should we be doing about it?
We never mentioned that. Democrats have pushed for years online voting because they think it will increase their share of the turnout, because it makes it easy and their voters don't like to get out of bed and go to the polls. So how can they still...
I'm nodding, but I don't agree with that.
Okay, but how can they still be pushing for online voting if we face this hacking threat from foreign countries? Why wouldn't we just use paper ballots?
I don't think this is as simple as online voting. We are... Who in the United States...
That's not more vulnerable than paper ballots?
Who in the United States is in charge of protecting us against China interfering with our elections? Even if it's hard, even if it's going to fail. Who's in charge?
Well, presumably you would think our captains of industry, of entertainment, Silicon Valley, our military, our
Who's in charge of fighting opioids?
I don't know. I mean,
Kellyanne Conway.
Okay.
Look. Why wouldn't there be a White House coordinator?
But what would he do? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Or she.
Okay,
well,
I'm actually using the broadly accepted pronoun that can stand for either one.
But let's just say it was Mike Pence for a moment.
Right.
What he would do is he would do a number of things. First of all, he would take a whole-of-government approach. But specifically, you hit a good point, which is that this also involves the private sector. This involves Facebook. This involves Google. He could bring people together and they could share best practices.
The first thing you would do is you would say no electronic voting, because it's vulnerable to foreign hacking. Yet Democrats are pushing electronic. Yes, you would. Of course, any system.
I have a better source than you. I wouldn't.
No, I have better sources, and also I have common sense, which trumps all.
This is where we
any system in which electronic data transfers between 2 points is vulnerable to hacking.
All voter rolls are electronic already.
Okay, but voting itself in states with paper ballots is safer than those that have electronic voting. Yet Democrats are pushing for electronic voting, even though they claim Russia's going to hack the election. How can that be?
All there is to know
I think we're talking about
the same thing. We're talking about the same thing.
Because until you join our community,
democratic vulnerability
that argues for the next 100 years to use paper as opposed to
soldiers in the Army National Guard live up to a set of time-honored principles.
I give you a specific thing, but how do you harden our democracy? And you laugh because it might hurt Democrats.
I laugh because it's the first thing I wanted to get about.
It's the obvious thing, but don't listen to
citizens and
let's
as
just use the word screwing around or interfering.
They train part-time to be ready to
let's just say
serve
they
at all
can't do it. Let's just say they're bad at it. Let's forget about 2016. I know you got the people over here in Nothing
Learn
Burger
more
Camp,
at
and you got the people over here in the
nationalguard.com.
Double Whopper with Cheese Camp. What should we be doing that we're not? And it seems that the people in charge of protecting us do not think we're doing enough.
Okay, well then I think every Democrat in Congress should do, and every Republican, to suspend all electronic voting until we can be sure the Russians can't hack it. That way we can have total confidence in the entire
Why do we bank?
I don't know.
Why don't we just go back to the fax machines and carrier
we're
pigeons?
not so worried about Russia all of a sudden. I love this. This is so
I'm the one worried. You're the one
talking to people. All right.
You do the Russia, the China ball over here.
Philippe, great to see you.
Always fun.
A student at Wake Forest says he's being harassed for his political views. Harassment's not allowed on campus, but wait, administrators don't even care. That student joins us next. Ryan, what happened?
Thanks for having me on, Tucker.
Thanks.
So back before the 2016 election, we had a panel talk that was hosted by the College Republicans, Wake the Vote, and the Wake Forest Review, which is the conservative publication on our campus. And kind of before, during, and after this event, there were messages about me on social media and in group chats, and that were kind of trying to intimidate me. And then after the event, I was handed a box of saltine crackers, and in a group chat during the event, a student photoshopped my face onto a cracker. And so our school has fairly strict verbal abuse, harassment.
And but by the way, just to pause, I assume that's a slur against your ethnicity, correct?
Yes, that's how it was intended, absolutely. And so we have pretty strict rules about harassment at our school, which clearly don't abide by the First Amendment. But we are trying to hold all students to the same standard. So I reported the conduct actually at the behest of one of my professors who used to be an MSNBC host, Melissa Harris Perry. And so I sent in these reports, and the university basically, after several weeks, gave me these options, and I asked to press charges, to open a school judicial case against the students who handed me the box of crackers and photoshopped my face onto a cracker. Then after several weeks, I was told, in many words, because our dean of students, Adam Goldstein, really isn't a frank person, that President Trump's election somehow justified their behavior, even though the incident happened before Election Day, and that if I brought a judicial case, it would make things worse for me. We were heading into finals week at the end of the semester. I just wanted this to be over.
Wait, so Adam Goldstein, who's the dean, Dean Goldstein said, I just want to make sure I'm not mischaracterizing this, said that the president's election somehow justified this attack on you?
Yeah, he doesn't say things in short sentences like that, but what I took away from that part of the conversation was that he was trying to justify their behavior because it was a response to the election of President Trump.
How did, I mean, that's it. I don't even know what to say. What was your response to that? It doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't. And I assume that they would never put up with this. If you'd been a different kind of person, this would have been swiftly punished, I assume, right?
Right, exactly. We had a racial slur incident just a few weeks ago, and let me be clear, I'm not equating what was said by this girl to what was said about me, but that student was asked to leave our school about 2 days later. This took several weeks, and they wouldn't even open a judicial case about harassment, even just kind of leaving the race part out.
So Dean Goldstein didn't say in that case, well, Barack Obama was elected president, 9 years ago. So it's sort of understandable that people might do that. That wasn't the excuse he gave in that case, I assume, right?
Oh, no, yeah. Well, this incident just happened a few weeks ago here. But, yeah, no, it makes no sense. I told him in that meeting that, individuals have to be held accountable for their individual actions under the rules we have at the school. And, if I had it my way, we would just abide by the First Amendment and we wouldn't have all these rules. But
right,
if
no,
we're
I
going
get
to have these strict, if we're going to have these strict rules in this bias reporting system, then everyone needs to be held accountable the exact same way.
Ryan, I really appreciate how brave you are to come on and how clearly you express that. And in a way, you're a credit to Wake Forest because you're impressive, but the school is obviously not living up to its own standards. So thanks for telling us about it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Students as young as 5 years old in Delaware may soon be able to say they're changing their gender, their race, without even letting their parents know. The school will protect them against their parents. Amazing.
That's why Channel 9 Eyewitness News is here for you. This is
Delaware is on the brink of passing a regulation that would allow children to change their gender without parental permission or even knowledge. Regulation 225 would order all schools to let kids pick their bathroom, locker room, sports team, preferred name, regardless of their biological gender. Regulation would also let students choose their own race, and if the school wishes, parents will be told nothing. Mark Purpura is president of Equality Delaware Foundation, and he joins us today. Mark, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Tucker. Thank you for having me.
So we don't let kids really make any decisions without their parents because their parents are in charge of them. Why would they be encouraged to make a decision this profound without letting their parents know?
Well, Tucker, the regulation doesn't encourage children to make any decision. It simply allows them to identify their gender or their race for school records purposes. The school is permitted under the regulation to seek the permission of parents before they make that change. And it suggests also that if the school decides to seek the permission of the parents, that they consider the health, safety, and well-being of the child before they do that. The sad reality, Tucker...
But hold on, but the school is not the parents. The teachers didn't give birth to the child, haven't raised the child. How could teachers justify not telling parents why are they not required to tell parents immediately?
Sure, Tucker. The simple fact is that some parents are simply not going to be supportive of their child, and it may endanger the child's safety or well-being to involve that parent in that.
Who makes that decision? Who makes that decision?
Well, the school would make the decision, but I think what's missing here is that.
No, what's missing here is outrage. So let me supply some. The school has no right to take away parental decision-making from parents. The children do not belong to school administrators. They are members of the family from which they came. How dare a school take that prerogative away from parents? Where do they get the right to do that?
Tucker, they're not taking the prerogative away from parents.
Well, obviously they are.
First of all, it's only in rare circumstances that a school would come to a determination that involving the parent is going to endanger the safety and well-being of the child.
But who has the right to decide that? Hold on. Well, slow down. Who has the right to decide that, and where does that right come from? Where does a school administrator have the right to override parental judgment in the case of a child?
Tucker, it's not about overriding parental judgment.
Well, of course
it's about No, it's about protecting the safety and well-being of that child.
Says who on the basis of what? Wait, hold on. This is it. Hold on, slow down. I'm a parent. Oh, stop. I'm a parent of 4. I can tell you the most sacrosanct right you have as a parent is to influence the development of your child. In order to violate that right, you need a court order. But you're saying that a school official can just decide it's not in the child's interest, and I'm asking you where you get the right to violate millennia of sacred tradition and make that decision in place of a parent. Simple question. Where's that right come from?
Tucker, the child has a right to dignity and respect in school. And they shouldn't have to choose between that dignity and respect and being unsafe at home, being subject to potential physical violence, mental anguish.
But somebody has to make the decision about, hold on, somebody has to make the decision. There's a subjective decision to be made about what's best for the child. And that decision is always made by parents unless a court determines that the parents are unable to make the right decision. It takes a court to do that.
Tucker,
yes. Yes.
We send children to schools, and administrators and teachers make those decisions every day.
About what race and sex the child is? Are you joking?
No,
this
Tucker,
has never been tried in any place in the world.
Tucker,
and for you to pretend it's no big deal and that nobody's rights are getting violated, yes, they are. Parental rights are being ignored because of political extremists, I hate to put you in that category, who think their views are more important than the rights of parents. And I think we should at least acknowledge that.
This regulation is similar to policies that have been implemented across the country. In Oregon and Washington and Massachusetts.
Oh, going back like
Washington,
about 6 months. This has never happened in human history. We didn't used to believe 3 years ago that you could change your sex or your race. So this is all brand new. So at least pay me the compliment of acknowledging this is brand new. This has never been tried.
It's not brand new.
Yes,
Tucker, it's not brand new.
Changing your race is an old thing. Well, how far back does that extend? Tell me the history. Is that in British common law? Like, what are you talking about?
It's not changing your race, Tucker. It's identifying your race. It's identifying your race.
Okay, look, we're not having a biology conversation. That's another segment. But I'm just telling you as a factual matter, no society has ever done that until very, very recently. It's never happened. So at least
Tucker,
acknowledge this is brand new.
It's happening in school districts, and it's being implemented seamlessly across school districts across the country.
But the rights of parents over their own children are being violated because of activists. And I'm going to stand up and say it. I don't care. I'm not afraid of you. And I think it's fair to say that parents are losing their rights in this over their own children. And I think that that's something we need to think about. I'm sorry,
Tucker, I think that we are on the same page.
My name is Sherry
parental involvement is very
I am a medical oncology nurse here in Central Florida.
But who makes that decision, and where do they get the right to make that decision? I don't know if you have children, but can I just say that I don't like the way you're parenting. I think it's really in the child's interest to not let you know about a profound life decision that kid is making. I don't think you need a court order to do that.
I found her altogether
This does not prohibit communication between the parent and the child.
The school hides this from the parent. They're not their children. Those children do not belong to the school. They belong to the family from which they came.
On your Amazon
I just want you to acknowledge that, and we could like move from there, but you won't.
You ask a question.
And you try to bully your children into going along with it, and I won't be.
There are plenty of circumstances, Tucker, where school counselors or other people,
they don't, you know, it's not their child. A school counselor doesn't get to decide. We're going to have to stop there. Mark, thank you for coming on.
To get news updates, open the Alexa app on your phone, search WFTV under Skills,